you see, there's no artist, let me be clear, there's no artist in this industry that's doing major numbers with these platforms that haven't sold their soul.
Whoever talks about best of both worlds, best of both worlds. Nobody talks about that.
Nobody talks about this shit.
Nobody talks about that project.
That swept that smooth under the rug.
Why?
What if everything you think you know about one of the most celebrated rap careers ever built was actually constructed on a mountain of borrowed flows, so polished they slipped past the culture for decades? The whispers have always been there, muttered by veteran producers and rival crews, but the full story has never been pulled together in one place until right now. We went back through decades of interviews, broke down iconic verses, and uncovered a pattern so bold it could completely rewrite hip-hop history. And the most explosive clues come from the one man who saw it all unfold inside the Rockefeller machine, Camron himself.
Always look at Jay-Z like, yo, you know, his words like, yo, your words can't reach God. I'm too high in the sky to hear what this is saying. Must have came down because you're paying attention to what this is saying, you know what I'm saying? But what I will say is this.
On his own platform, Killa Can begins connecting dots most people completely overlooked. A buried diss inside a Watch the Throne anthem that slid past listeners for over a decade. A post-show phone message after a so-called peace concert that left him even more confused than before. A lawsuit that on the surface was about money but never truly felt like it. And a fallout with Dame Dash that Cam openly frames as one massive setup. Individually, it sounds like industry noise, but line it all up and you start seeing a blueprint of control stretching from the studio booth straight into the boardroom. This isn't just about pen and paper anymore. It's about a system built to keep you second-guessing while the truth stays buried. Stick with this because the real story is only just beginning. Here's where things get messy, because the one person holding the most explosive details is also the same figure fans have long brushed off as just another loud Harlem voice. Camron has never delivered his stories in a clean, structured way. He jokes, he drifts, he even pivots mid-story into selling intimacy gummies while unpacking serious moments. But when you actually track every loose thread he's dropped since launching his show, a darker pattern starts to emerge. It doesn't feel like random stories anymore. It starts to look like a manual on how a powerful music mogul moves behind the scenes while the audience is too busy laughing to notice. The central accusation that has followed Hav for years is simple, that the pen game the world praised was never fully his alone, that the cadence, the structure, even the architecture of those bars may have been built from pieces borrowed from others who came before him. That claim isn't new. What's new is who is now backing it from inside what used to be his own circle. Now rewind to a moment that looked, on the surface, like pure unity and celebration. In 2019, Jay-Z brought Camron out during the B-Sides 2 concert in New York City, and the footage felt like closure in real time. Two men who once traded some of the most cutting diss records of the 2000s were finally standing on the same stage again. Cam even called it a beautiful moment, the kind that makes fans believe in growth and forgiveness. But what happened after the lights went down is where the story really shifts. According to Cam, Hav sent a text that still doesn't sit right with him today. It praised the night, then added a line about how much more they could achieve once people stopped pretending there was fake friction. That single word, fake, hit differently. Cam admitted on air he didn't even know how to process it. Why acknowledge real history between them, only to subtly suggest the conflict itself was never real? Because that's the turning point. Either you accept that real damage happened between two people, or you quietly rewrite the past to make it look like it was all performance from the start. And that message becomes more than just a text. It starts to look like a key unlocking a much bigger way of framing the entire narrative.
Too much can packed into it, pause. It's like, he tried to just like 10 and 35, 40, 36, 40 bars, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of that shit, like you said, goes over your head.
Because once you convince the public that everything is fabricated, you never really have to answer for what actually caused it. And the Otis mystery fits that idea almost too perfectly. For over a decade, nobody noticed the alleged subliminal buried inside the Watch the Throne lead single. On the surface, it's pure celebration, a soul-sampled anthem that still gets played at cookouts and radio sets. But Camron recently broke it down on his show and zoomed in on the third verse, pointing to a sequence that feels either like coincidence or a masterclass in hidden disrespect. Hav raps about escaping on a private jet, uses the word asylum in a way that can be read both as a political term and a nod to the label Cam was distributed under at the time, then closes with a reference to protecting Yeezy from anyone who steps out of line. Cam even recalls that his circle had made comments about Ye just weeks before the track dropped. The timing feels tight, the language feels deliberate, and even Cam doesn't fully commit to calling it a coincidence. He admits he can't prove intent, but that's exactly how subliminals survive. They live in that gray zone where only the intended target feels it, while everyone else just enjoys the beat. Now zoom out, and the pattern starts bleeding into almost every relationship around that circle. The Dame Dash situation stands out as one of the most painful examples, because it begins with three men building an empire together and somehow ends in jokes, insults, and accusations of setup culture. Cam has openly said the breakdown with Dame felt engineered from the start. He points to a moment involving 50 Cent at a conference, something as simple as a handshake and a hip tap that later got twisted into something embarrassing once it reached blogs through Dame's retelling. By the time it circulated online, the story had mutated into a punchline. Cam says he watched a harmless moment of peace get turned into ammunition, and that distortion is what he believes truly ignited the feud. And then there's the twist. When Cam decided to squash his issues with Jay-Z, he expected Dame to respect it. After all, Dame had already publicly made peace with Hav earlier that year. Instead, Dame mocked the reunion, gave it a dismissive nickname, and turned what should have been a reconciliation into comedy. Even later, when Cam and Mace tried to help Dame financially by offering to buy into Rockefeller, the deal mysteriously fell apart, only for the terms to change when Dame came back weeks later. And that's where the question starts hanging in the air. When do you stop calling it bad luck and start noticing a pattern? The point isn't to pick sides in some old industry breakup. It's to highlight how every time someone tries to step outside the assigned narrative, chaos seems to show up right on cue. The J. Cole situation is the clearest example, because it's the one moment where everything eventually got said out loud. Cam filed a lawsuit over Ready 24, claiming unpaid work and a promised podcast appearance that never happened. For months, it looked like a standard industry money dispute. Then Cole appeared on Cam's show, and suddenly the tone shifted completely. Both of them laughed it off. Cam admitted the lawsuit was never meant to go anywhere. It was about forcing attention, not winning in court. Cole admitted his ego took a hit at first, but later understood exactly why it happened. In other words, the legal system wasn't just legal, it became a communication tool. And that's not normal behavior unless you've spent years watching power players bend institutions into leverage machines. Those ripples even split Cam's own circle. Dame Jones has publicly pushed for a versus battle, arguing that Dipset's performance against the Lox exposed deep cracks in their legacy. But underneath the challenge is something sharper, a demand to assign blame, to settle old scores, to define who really carried the weight when things fell apart. Cam hasn't responded, and that silence says more than any diss record could. For someone built on confrontation, stepping away from the fight almost feels like exhaustion with the entire system of public conflict itself. You could almost hear the underlying question: why keep entering rings that were never fair to begin with? Even the Cash Money versus No Limit versus only reinforced that mindset for Cam, who pointed out how much of the crowd didn't even understand the history they were watching unfold, how the setting felt off, and how key figures were missing for reasons that had nothing to do with music. It turned celebration into content again. And yet, even through all that cynicism, Cam still draws a hard boundary. When Ye started targeting Jay-Z's family in recent outbursts, Cam didn't hesitate. He called it desperate, out of bounds, and unnecessary. That reaction matters because it shows something deeper beneath all the suspicion and theories. A code still exists, and for Cam, crossing that line says more about someone's state of mind than any industry rumor ever could. He also pointed out that Ye has been toggling public instability for years, sometimes amplifying it, sometimes stepping out of it. And now, finally, audiences are starting to recognize that performance for what it is.
Person, when do you start questioning how lucky some fuckers keep getting?
All of this brings us back to the one question the loudest voices in hip-hop have been circling for decades without ever fully answering. Was the pen truly his, or did the empire rise on top of borrowed genius that the original creators were never properly credited for? The trail people point to is long and complicated. You've got vocal cadences that mirror Notorious B.I.G. so closely that even casual listeners picked up on the resemblance the moment the records dropped. You've got flows that feel like they stretch back to Slick Rick and Rakim, almost like direct echoes of golden-era architecture rebuilt in a modern form. You've also got the testimony of people like Cam, who imply, without fully spelling it out, that the writing credits they've seen don't always match the stories they were told inside the studio. But the most telling piece isn't even a single bar or credit sheet. It's the pattern in how criticism gets handled. Every time someone questions the narrative, the response tends to follow the same script. They're bitter, they're broke, or they're rewriting history because their own career didn't go as planned. And once that framing sticks, the actual question, who created what, gets buried under personality politics and public perception wars. Camron, to his credit, has never fully stepped into the role the internet tries to assign him, the disgruntled ex-associate with an axe to grind. That version of the story would have been easy. Instead, he praises the business instincts, acknowledges the opportunities that came from that orbit, but keeps dropping smaller details and inconsistencies that don't neatly align with the official history. And he leaves it there, trusting the audience to connect the dots for themselves.
Listen, because I think it was too much compact. What?
Shit is real.
Very rare, but I do agree with you.
Consider the strange case of the freestyle that kicked off this entire recent wave of controversy. A TV appearance dropped a verse that instantly got dragged online. People called it flat, awkward, and painfully undercooked. Defenders jumped in fast, arguing it was off the dome, that freestyles aren't meant to be polished, and that the backlash came from people who simply don't understand hip-hop culture. But Cam's side of the conversation didn't move like that. He didn't just label the verse as weak, he escalated it. He started naming names, pointing to artists he considers true lyricists, and the list read like a hall of fame of New York rap royalty. Ghostface Killah, Mos Def, Big Pun, no hesitation, no filter. The message underneath was blunt. Don't confuse hype with hierarchy. Stop acting like one body of work is untouchable just because of where it came from. There's an entire catalog of undeniable greatness that deserves respect without requiring anyone to sign off on a single legacy. And that's where things get uncomfortable for a lot of people, because regional pride has often been used like armor. Criticize the architecture and suddenly you're labeled a hater. Question the foundation and the reply becomes about loyalty, boroughs, and who's allowed to speak. Cam, who's as Harlem as it gets, cuts straight through that. His existence alone breaks that argument. He represents the idea that you can love the culture, respect the history, and still call things exactly how you see them. He even put it directly on his platform, questioning whether preferring Q-Tip or KRS-One over the figure at the center of the debate somehow disqualifies someone from hip-hop entirely. And what stood out most wasn't the argument itself, it was the silence that followed from the usual gatekeepers, as if that question hit a little closer to something nobody wanted to fully answer.
that I can think of, unless you can tell me. Maybe I'm just not thinking about that. I'm talking about that they do this full time. Well, last time you heard Jadakiss do a song, he don't give a fuck. He do it when he wants, because he know when he come out, it's gonna be special. He know that. You know what I'm saying? So
What makes the current moment so unstable is that the old machinery of narrative control simply doesn't work the way it used to. Independent platforms like Cam's show have changed the game completely, letting stories surface without the traditional gatekeepers deciding what gets amplified or buried. A casual podcast clip of Cam recalling a strange text message can now travel further and land harder than any polished press release ever could. Even small moments get reinterpreted in real time. A joke about dental adhesive turns into a wider metaphor about how fragile explanations are used to hold shaky narratives together. And the audience isn't the same anymore. People are more skeptical, more alert, and far less willing to accept the old reflex where every critic gets dismissed as a clout chaser trying to chase relevance. The J. Cole lawsuit storyline added another layer to that shift, because it showed how even the newer generation has learned to operate inside the same playbook. The public reconciliation between Cole and Cam played out like a masterclass in controlled narrative repair. They sat down, they laughed, they reframed the entire legal dispute as a misunderstanding mixed with strategy, and audiences walked away feeling like they had witnessed closure. But when you step back, the unresolved questions are still there. Ready 24 was released without Cam's final approval, according to his original claims. Promises around promotion and appearances allegedly went unfulfilled until legal pressure forced movement. And because the settlement terms were never made public, nobody actually knows whether the outcome was fair compensation or simply a trade of silence for attention already achieved. In the end, the system functioned exactly as it tends to. A private dispute was settled behind closed doors, while the public was given a clean, feel-good clip to consume. The deeper question, whether artists in that position routinely lose leverage in these situations, was never really answered. And that leads into the more uncomfortable layer underneath all of this. Maybe the most valuable thing that gets eroded in these cycles isn't music or credit, it's trust. Look at the pattern of broken alliances. Jay-Z and Dame Dash went from building an empire together to complete silence. Cam and Dame turned from collaborators into opposing narratives over one distorted moment. Jim Jones and Cam now publicly challenge each other, while fans turn legacy into competition. Even Ye, once aligned closely with Hav on global stages, is now throwing out accusations that cross lines most people consider untouchable. Is it possible that one mastermind is behind all of it? No, that doesn't hold up. But is it possible that a shared system of behavior built around loyalty tests, narrative control, and public perception creates conditions where real relationships eventually collapse under pressure? That part is much harder to dismiss.
I can think of, unless you can tell me. Maybe I'm just not thinking about that. I'm talking about that they do this full time. Well, last time you heard Jadakiss do a song, he don't give a fuck. He do it when he wants, because he know when he come out, it's gonna be special. He know that, you know what I'm saying?
But Cameron may never openly say the exact thing that the most extreme corners of the internet keep trying to pin on him. He's too calculated for that, too comfortable in his own space to gamble everything on a viral explosion. But the truth is, he doesn't really need to say it outright, because the case he's building, piece by piece on his platform, already forms a narrative far more loaded than any single diss record ever could. The supposed hidden disses, the strange text exchanges that feel like gaslighting, the beefs that seem engineered and then rewritten, the lawsuits that somehow double as podcast content, the friendships that flip into rivalries over incidents the public never even saw clearly. It's all sitting there in fragments, waiting for someone to connect it. Meanwhile, the industry keeps moving like nothing is happening. The records still chart, the business deals still expand, and the legacy continues to get polished and reauthored in real time. But underneath it, more cracks keep showing, and every new episode from that Harlem platform seems to add another fault line to the structure. At this point, the question isn't even just about whether parts of the legend are exaggerated or reshaped. It's about whether the audience actually wants clarity, or whether the myth itself is more valuable than whatever truth might sit beneath it. So the real question gets handed back to you. Is Cam just an entertaining voice spinning stories for content, or is he functioning as an unfiltered narrator of an era most people have already accepted without question? And maybe the biggest illusion of all isn't about lyrics or credit. It's the idea that what we've been watching all along was ever just entertainment in the first place. Drop your thoughts below if you've noticed anything else hiding in plain sight, because this conversation isn't slowing down anytime soon.
Now, I would want, why?
Just to talk to or answer face to face.
One answer.